Not a forgive and forget sort of guy.
Right.
Sessions' recusal happened many, many moons ago, and yet the president shows no signs of easing back. This is something that profoundly disturbs him. I think Congressman Gowdy made a good point when he said, look, from the president's perspective, he could have chosen any one of a number of talented lawyers who would have been honored to serve as the United States Attorney General. He chose Jeff Sessions, and he wished he knew now or wished he knew then what he knows now, namely that Sessions would have recused.
Yeah, for sure. Good to see you, sir. Thanks so much.
Likewise. Thank you.
Up next, Kim Kardashian will be heading into the White House today to try and get somebody out of jail. Who is it? We're going to talk about that. Why is Kim Kardashian at the White House? Back in a minute. Reality TV star Kim Kardashian West will be visiting the White House today. Why? FBN's Connell McShane joins us now with the very latest. Connell, good afternoon to you.
Hey there, Maria. Well, she's there for a serious reason at the White House, or she will be, to talk about a subject that apparently has become quite near and dear to Kim Kardashian West, and that is prison reform. She'll reportedly push for a pardon for a great-grandmother who's been serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole for a nonviolent drug offense. Now we have our cameras set up, as I'm sure you would expect, waiting for the arrival of Kim. And once she does arrive there at the White House, unless she slips by somehow, we'll see her on the walk-in like any visitor would on her way into the West Wing of the White House. Now, earlier in the day, before heading over to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, she sent out this tweet. She has 60 million followers on Twitter who saw this. Very simple stuff. And the tweet said, "Happy birthday, Alice Marie Johnson. Today is for you." Now, Alice Marie Johnson's a 62-year-old, spent the last 21 years in a federal prison serving a life sentence for a drug conspiracy and money laundering conviction. It's the type of case that advocates of prison reform have pointed to, saying the punishment doesn't necessarily fit the crime. And Kim Kardashian, here she comes now, I believe, Kim Kardashian will be able to take that argument to the highest place she possibly can, and that would be the West Wing of the White House. She has a meeting once she does make her way in there to the West Wing with Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law. Now, the way it goes here, kind of blocked by the trees to see the entrance of the White House, the way it goes, Maria, as you know, anytime you have a meeting like that, there's a good shot. Ms. Kardashian, as she makes her way into the White House, there's always the possibility once she gets in there, maybe she'd have an Oval Office sit down with the president. I know Sarah Sanders was asked about it earlier, just confirmed that she'd be there. Would not confirm any of the meetings that would take place, said she'd let us know, but plenty of pictures being taken of Kim Kardashian on her way in. But this is serious stuff for her, prison reform.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see what else comes up in this conversation. The Kim Kardashian West now at the White House. We see the pictures, Connell, and they've met before. And remember, her husband was
Kanye,
out.
Right.
Speaking positively about President Trump just recently.
And it's interesting, I think, that people have made note of this, that Kanye West, at least from those pictures and from the reports we had earlier, does not appear to have accompanied his wife. And she's trying to keep this, it looks like, low profile. I mean, there's no reality TV crew or anything like that following her up the White House driveway. Not that necessarily would be allowed. But the point is she's trying to keep it serious, trying to keep it on subject. And that subject, again, is prison reform. I mean, the president's kind of taken this up in the last week or two as well. Some would argue that it goes against some directives that were given early in the Trump administration in terms of first-time offenders and how to treat nonviolent drug offenders and what have you. But in recent weeks, we've heard the president talk about this a couple of times, and this woman that she's talking about here today apparently would be a perfect example. This Alice Marie Johnson, she had put a video out, or she had done an interview where a video had been put out in an online media interview, Maria, where she had talked about her case. Said, you know, she lost her job years ago and ended up making a mistake. She doesn't deny the crime that she committed in this drug offense, drug trafficking type crime, but she said she made a mistake, and now she's being punished for it with essentially her life, being put behind bars for her entire life without the possibility of parole, because there's no parole in the federal system. So that's the case that Kim Kardashian apparently will take, at least to Jared Kushner, and maybe even higher than that this afternoon.
All right, we'll watch for any developments out of that meeting. Connell, thank you. Connell McShane, quick break. We've got new signs. Consumer spending is slowing, but not for long. Why that's happening and what...
To keep this momentum going, to continue this incredible progress, to keep on winning, you have to vote Republican in November.
If the election was today, we'd hold the majority. I mean, think about it. If you look at the generic ballot, where it was a year ago, plus 13 for the Democrats, somebody had it in plus 1 for Republicans. And that's because the economy continues to grow.
That was both President Trump and House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy sounding pretty confident about Republicans' chances in November. New numbers today suggesting they may very well be right, while a read on the economy on the first quarter did not quite hit the mark this morning. Growth is expected to rebound up to 3.5% this year as more of those tax cuts kick in and resonate. So will that help Republicans continue to close the gap in the polls? Let's bring in right now political commentator Ashley Pratt, Democratic strategist Robert Patillo, and GOP strategist Kimberly Klacik. Good to see everybody. Thanks for joining us this morning. Kimberly, kick it off with you. Do you agree with Leader McCarthy that the GOP can hold on to Congress in November given the policies they've released?
I absolutely agree with the minority leader. Right now, what we're seeing is the fastest wage growth since 2009, the lowest jobless rate since 2000, and unemployment is steady at 3.9%. Pro-growth policies like Jobs Acts, the tax cuts, they're working. When people go down to the polls and they go to vote, they think about the money that's either in or out of their pocket. And it's hard to say we can keep these numbers going, but if you look at every indication, it looks to me that the economy will continue to boom all the way till November.
Yeah, and not only that, but Kevin McCarthy, the majority leader, is actually being talked about as becoming the next Speaker of the House. So, Ashley, if in fact the Republicans do hold on to seats and gain seats in November, you're going to see Speaker McCarthy come 2019.
We would, but ultimately, Maria, elections do come down to the economy, and it's always been the economy's stupid. That's always the slogan that's out there. And I think that this, points exactly to the point that we were just speaking about, which is it's the individuals' paychecks that they have seen increased and how these economic policies are working. So regardless of the fact that there may be people out there who disagree with the rhetoric of the White House or this administration, you have to see these kind of increases in paychecks and how that does affect the American voter. But at the end of the day, and this is where I think Democrats do have a bit of an opportunity, is if they were to develop a platform that reaches swing state voters, specifically blue-collar workers that Trump was able to swing over to him in 2016 with an economic message that works instead of railing against the tax cuts.
Yeah, Robert, it's interesting because the Democrats had that under Bill Clinton, a grasp of the economy, a grasp of what's happening in terms of impacting people's lives, but they lost it. The party appears to have been hijacked by the extreme left.
Well, one thing is the Democratic Party is starting to come back to the center on some of these bread and butter issues.
Is that right?
What we have to remember is over the last decade, the Democratic Party lost, I think, 1,044 elections on the state and national level. But what we've seen since 2016 is over 44 special elections and general elections where Democrats have picked up seats. They're coming back from the far left wing of the party and coming back to the center to focus on things such as jobs, such as education, such as health care reform that actually affects Americans. And they've even come up by taking the slogan, drain the swamp, to justify them coming back in this fall. So there may be a blue wave this fall despite the economic numbers.
But how are they doing that, Robert? Let's face it, Nancy Pelosi called the tax bonuses crumbs. She said it was Armageddon, and not one Democrat voted for the tax reform plan. So you say they're coming to the center, but are we actually seeing the evidence of it?
Well, let's look at the tax plan. The tax plan was a huge giveaway to the upper 1% of the economy.
Well, that's not true, actually. That's not true, actually.
Let's understand that your bread and butter workers, your people who are at the bottom of the economy, haven't seen the benefits of the tax plan the way that big corporations have.
50% actually don't even pay taxes in this plan, Kimberly. Go ahead, Ashley.
Yeah, so one point here I just want to make. The closer to the center that I think both parties play and stay to economic messaging, we are in for a real fight on election night. The closer they veer, the further they veer from that, I think it becomes more of either that blue or red wave that we can now talk about. And I think, again, it depends on these swing states and the messaging that you're using. The American people are struggling. They want to see money back in their wallets and in their paychecks. And again, it's all about the economy. That is what will ultimately determine who wins the election at the end of the day in November for 2018.
And a lot of the left, Robert, has been about resist. Hashtag resist, resist, resist. No real message away from resist President Trump.
Well, I think that's because President Trump sucks up a huge amount of the news cycle. But let's look at what the state of the playing field is coming out of 2016.
Right.
President Trump still lost the general election by 3 million votes. So there's the Republican Party can't just sit back and be fat and sassy right now. They're going to have to put policies that.
Go ahead, Ashley. Real quick.
Stop using that as a Democratic talking point and start building a platform, and then maybe you would win in November. But being anti-Trump is not going to be the winning message. The economy will be.
Great conversation.
So
This is the conversation taking place across the country. We appreciate it. I'll catch you tomorrow morning on the Fox Business Network. Join me for Mornings with Maria. I'm talking with former U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Bill Richardson. He's a Democrat, but has some positive things to say about the Trump administration handling of North Korea. Plus, Bill Browder after his arrest by Russia. Neil's back tomorrow, and the 5 starts now.
Hi, I'm Greg Gutfeld with KG, Geraldo, Jesse Waters, and she pole vaults with a bobby pin. Dana Perino, the 5.
Oh, boy.
So Roseanne disappeared faster than a classified email on a Clinton server. Ooh. ABC saw the handwriting, hit warp speed. It's new crisis PR, one-stop liquidation while you wait. But I'll be honest, I'm kind of sad. I'm not shocked. I'm sad. And I'm not sad for Roseanne. I'm sad that this experiment failed. When Roseanne first aired, why did it intrigue us? It wasn't the content. The show was a mess. It wasn't because we loved Roseanne. We knew she was kind of nutty. No, we liked it because maybe it signaled progress in civil discourse, where the pros and the cons could break bread instead of bones. But not anymore. And so the world moves on to whoever's next. Of course, you know who the media will target.
We know what Donald Trump thinks. We know what Roseanne Barr thinks. It's racist. They're exhibiting racist behavior.
It was a great move yesterday. The thing that sort of is the background of all of this is that the president can be racist and nothing happens to him.
Roseanne's show canceled because she tweeted out racist stuff. You know who I blame for this? Donald Trump. That's who.
Tens of millions of people voted for him after he showed his cards for years.
But are you suggesting that they're racist, or they're
yes?
The people who vote, all the people who voted for Donald Trump are racist?
Yes.
See what I mean? The discourse is already over. And so the left takes the idiotic words of one person and blames it on millions. So it's no more about Roseanne's awful tweet. It's about the left expanding the tweet to the president and, by connection, half of America. Which raises one interesting question. Did President Obama own Roseanne's nutty beliefs from years ago? She once said Wall Street bankers should be executed. She believed the Boston Marathon was staged. Is that on Obama since they happened when he was in office and she was a hardcore leftist? No, that's absurd. But this current blanket of blame that's now being spread suggests it's always been there, regardless of Roseanne. If it wasn't her, it would be someone else. So the left doesn't actually need Roseanne to smear you. They're at war with you already. All right, she's back on tweeting, Dana. She's tweeting.
Yeah.
She's
that lasted long.
Yeah. I don't think she's going to go quietly. I think she's going to fight this.
When she said, I'm sorry I offended anybody and I'm off Twitter, it's like, okay, goodbye.
No, stuck.
But then it's like people are just obsessed with being on Twitter. It's like their self-worth is all wrapped up into Twitter.
Here's her latest, I think one of her latest tweets. It was about how she had been, I'm not a racist, never was, never will be. One stupid joke in a lifetime of fighting for civil rights for all minorities against networks, studios at the expense of my nervous system, family, wealth, and what will never be taken from me. Geraldo, what do you make of this? She has been, she was a socialist, right?
Socialist, conservative, left, right, Trump,
Green.
this,
Party.
that, the other thing.
Green Party.
That's right.
There are some things that are absolutely unforgivable. You may not compare a black woman to an ape. I'm sorry. End of discussion. You get fired. And when we start nuancing it, and we start taking sides and blaming the president, you take away personal responsibility. I am guilty of drunk tweeting. I have drunk tweeting.
And drunk toweling.
And drunk toweling. But the thing about drunk tweeting or toweling is that it reveals your soul. I believe that drunks.
So you
tell
are
the
an
truth.
exhibitionist.
I believe whatever you believe, you can construe my words.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some things, a line you may not pass.
Mm-hmm.
You may not say what she said. And what disturbs me deeply is that I shudder to think that this is what informed her comedy and her politics. And I think all of us have to examine our own souls. We all say crap. Back in my day, the 1950s, the early 1960s, in locker rooms, you said a lot of stuff. Intolerable. No room for wiggling. No room to nuance and I make it about ideology or philosophy. This was a killing mistake that she made. I hope it was a mistake. And I hope it doesn't reveal her true soul.
I want to, Jesse, I want to play this. This is Sarah Sanders talking about the double standard. Shall we play that?
Why not?
Okay.
The president's pointing to the hypocrisy in the media, saying that the most horrible things about this president, and nobody addresses it. Where was Bob Iger's apology to the White House staff for Jamel Hill calling the president and anyone associated with him a white supremacist? To Christians around the world for Joy Behar calling Christianity a mental illness? Where was the apology for Kathy Griffin going on a profane rant against the president on The View after a photo showed her holding President Trump's decapitated head? And where was the apology from Bob Iger for ESPN hiring Keith Olbermann after his numerous expletive-laced tweets attacking the president as a Nazi and even expanding Olbermann's role after that attack against the president's family? This is a double standard that the president is speaking about. No one is defending her comments. They're inappropriate, but that's what the point that he was making.
What do you make of that, Jesse?
You know, I love playing the double standard game. I do it better than anybody.
You do.
It's my go-to.
It is.
Like whataboutism. I can do that all day.
You can.
I just don't think in this case it gets us anywhere. You can say that Bill Maher used the N-word and kept his job. You can say Keith Olbermann said F the president. You can say that Joy Reid was a homophobe and then lied about it. But we all know Republicans have a very short leash when it comes to mistakes. The Democrats in the media will circle the wagons around their soldiers and they will go for Republican scalps. That's just the way it is. You can't argue with it. That's the reality of it. Just going back to Roseanne for a second, there's a great scene from The Office where Michael Scott says to Dwight, "What's the most inspiring thing I ever said to you?" And Dwight says, "Don't be an idiot. Changed my life." And then he looked at the camera and said, "Whenever I'm about to do something, I think to myself, would an idiot do that?" And then I don't do that thing. That's what Roseanne should have done. It's just idiotic to do. She's self-destructed. People do it for many reasons: drugs, pressure. They're risk takers. Charlie Sheen did it.
Yeah.
Blew up his entire career over nothing. Over absolutely nothing. We've seen people plant little time bombs in their career, and then all of a sudden the Me Too movement finds them. It's what happens, and it's just a sad case. I agree with you, which is sad for not only her, not really her, but the people involved in the show.
Yeah. You know, the thing is, and when they talk about the double standard, I made a Charlie Sheen, liberal, Alec Baldwin, liberal, Bill Maher, liberal, lost his job after 9/11. Kathy Griffin lost her job at CNN because I don't know if the double standard argument holds. Kimberly, what do you make of that montage we showed of people like taking her tweet and saying, okay, all of America is racist?
Yeah, I mean, but that's sort of kind of the liberal playbook, right? They try to tether anything that they think might be repugnant and tie it to the president in order to try to create this like relationship between anybody who might have supported the president and anything bad that is said. So in this sense, I mean, I agree with you about personal responsibility. You know, she's got to take ownership of this situation. We can't just blame everything on Ambien. That's not going to work.
That's our next topic.
That's the next topic. But, you know, in this particular instance, like we covered it so well yesterday in terms of saying the fallout is far-reaching in terms of the people who's affected by it, the economic, you know, impact. She said she was going to stay off Twitter.
Yeah.
But lacking impulse control, she went back on it, you know, today. I don't think it made it any better. It muddied the waters. Yes, right on cue. Right on cue.
Muddy Waters.
Muddy Waters. Next up. Yeah.
That's my dad's nickname in college.
Was it really?
Yeah, Muddy Waters.
Interesting.
That's a fact we
Sounds
don't
like a
need
good drink.
I'm not going to tell you my nickname.
Yeah, no, let's not go there. So Roseanne, I think in this particular sense, should just probably just quiet down and just, you know,
But that's not in her nature.
No.
I want to bring up this ambient defense because I have
Before
used.
you do it, can I say that the president missed an opportunity today? Here, it would have been so easy. I mean, when I was with him, I said, you need more black people around. I think that you have an opportunity here, just a passing phrase. You know, he could say everything he said, but start it with, this is abhorrent, this is awful, I don't condone this, this is, as much as I like her comedy, this wasn't funny. You know, it would have been easy for him to reach out and to deny the naysayers.
Yeah. Now she blames Ambien, and I think Ambien responded. A pill actually responded.
They woke up and responded.
The last sentence there. While all pharmaceutical treatments have side effects, racism is not a known side effect of any which is a clever thing. But Dana, you and I both know that there are potential problems with Ambien and electronics.
Yes, I mean you've heard lots of stories about it.
From you. No, I'm kidding.
I've never had a problem. I don't take Ambien anymore.
Yeah.
I did for a long. I had such a hard time sleeping for a long time, and it was something I'd take a half of one. But it really does knock you out, and you can't play around with it. You have to read the side effects, follow the orders of your doctor. You can do stupid things or funny things.
What did
I've
you
eaten
do?
an entire jar of peanut butter.
I think.
Hopefully it wasn't mayonnaise.
Yes, it could have been.
There was a New York Times columnist who said, after taking Ambien, all of a sudden ate in the middle of the night an entire package of double stuffed Oreos.
I don't doubt that.
You sure it was Ambien, not good pot?
Ambien. But yes, Ambien does not make you a racist.
That's why you switched to Tylenol, right?
But the thing also that bothers me about that is that yesterday she said, I'm going to apologize.
Yeah.
Okay. Then she said, I'm going to apologize you didn't get my joke. Now she's defending herself by saying, well, really, I didn't need to apologize because I took Ambien and alcohol and mixed them together.
Yeah. Yeah, other thing, too, and I know, Geraldo, you'll remember this because you're second to me, the oldest person here. This isn't actually new. If you remember Jimmy the Greek, and remember Howard Cosell, when what he said about Alvin Garrett on Monday Night Football, people think that this is a new thing, but it happens like almost once every 3 years. It's just accelerated that people screw up.
You know, but the ape stuff, it's like the N-word. It's so,
that's what I'm saying. That
it's so blatant, though. It's so raw. It's so disgustingly antiquated. You know, at some point, where the hell is your head that you conjure up that kind of? Where does that sentence come from?
Yeah.
You know, it's just it is so intolerable that that's what all this fuss is about. It's not, I mean, to pretend that other people said this or that, and that it's sort of the same, or they should have done this and that. I think that misses the point. There's got to be some boundary.
Last word.
Yeah, I just think that, you know, the mainstream media, the way they react to situations like this, they just lose whatever shred of credibility they have left, because to try to say that this is directly a link to the president or he's responsible for it makes absolutely no sense, and it really cheapens the dialogue about what should be a focus on intolerable racism.
Anything they can blame on Trump, they will.
And if you were to follow that premise, you would say that Bernie Sanders is responsible for the Bernie bro that shot Steve Scalise. Very thin analogy.
And I don't think anybody ever said that here. I'm trying to remember.
I didn't.
I didn't. Anything?
Well, I'm just to Geraldo's point about it was not me. That one of the ways that the president could have owned the media today was to tweet something else.
Yeah.
Rather than tweet about a grievance for himself.
Yeah.
Tweet in defense of someone else and make them eat their words.
We will never be
That's
able
the way
to
you do it.
influence Donald Trump's tweeting. It's on his own third rail.
I swear to God, I would love to be his
Talk
tweet
to
editor.
Scavino.
All right, coming up.
He's a tool of Chuck Schumer and, of course, the MS-13 lover, Nancy Pelosi.
President Trump unleashing on Democrats over immigration, how Republicans plan to use this to win big in the midterms. That's next.
The road to the midterms heats up as President Trump and Republicans unleash their strategy for battle. At last night's rally in Nashville, the president blasted Democrats in Congress for being soft on MS-13.
He's a tool of Chuck Schumer and, of course, the MS-13 lover, Nancy Pelosi. She loves MS-13. Can you imagine? Chuck and Nancy. They don't want the wall. They want open borders. They're more interested in taking care of criminals than they are in taking care of you.
And immigration seems to be a theme across the board for Republicans in 2018. Check out these campaign ads for midterm candidates.
Calling people animals is not a good thing.
I'll end sanctuary cities to stop illegals from taking our jobs.
It's time to build the wall, make English our official language, and put America first.
Politicians put Mexico before Muncie, Beijing before Bloomington. Jobs disappeared.
So that's a little compilation of clips there, Jesse. If you follow the money as to how these ads are being spent, the messages that they're using, it's not about tax cuts, the economy, all the good news that the president could tout. It's about something that he really wants to talk about, which is immigration.
I don't know if they were going into the midterms thinking they were going to run on immigration, but Nancy just handed them this gift with this gaffe with MS-13 by saying there was a little spark of divinity inside each and every one of them. And then when you combine that with the crumbs with the tax cuts, they're going to run on 2 Pelosi gaffes. So that was an unforced error by the Democrats. Usually midterm elections or base elections, it's about turnout and the president's popularity at the time. President's personal popularity a little different than his policy popularity. Right now he's surging on 3 issues: immigration, the economy, and trade. And his numbers are really going up with millennials, people's age 50 to 64, churchgoers and non-churchgoers, figure that one out, and men. So that is a very large swath of Americans. And when you put a thing like immigration at the front and center of your message, it's not just immigration. You talk about national security, identity, law and order, wages. It touches on a lot of things. I know the Democrats are going to come in with the health care deal. That's why President Trump is saying he's going to release his own Republican health care plan, which I'm sure is going to be great, in the next couple of weeks to counter that.
Geraldo, is it a step too far, though, to say that Nancy Pelosi is a lover of MS-13?
Well, I think that, Dana, it is very effective to make this argument. It worked in Brexit. It's working throughout Europe with populist parties. I think the immigration issue is, and as a Republican, I think I see the wisdom of their choice. As a Latino and as a proud, patriotic American, I lament this demonization of immigrants. They are taking this tiny MS-13, one of 33,000 gangs in the country. What about the Bloods? What about the Crips? What about the KKK? What about the IRA? You go on. And do you call them all animals? Are they all animals, or is it only MS-13? Is it only this Latino something?
They're not coming over the border. The point is about letting in people who are criminal recidivists, repeat offenders that prey on society. Those are the cases we saw at the DA's office. That's why it's a distinction between that and over in Ireland, the IRA and the other group.
I believe that the subtext is it is us against them being the poor Latinos who come to the country and vote Democratic when they get legalized. I think it is intentional. It is ruthlessly pragmatic. I think it is also unfortunate and will further divide the nation, although I do believe, to Jesse's point, that it is leading unmistakably to a surge and a decrease in the possibility of a blue wave.
Well, you have terrified me about the IRA, Geraldo, running wild with machetes all over the South Bronx. Well, what are we going to do?
See, you're too young to have been around, like in London, where they were blowing up somebody.
I know, but I'm just saying I don't think the IRA is on the same level as MS-13.
You want to bet?
In this country right now?
Well, in this country.
Okay, well,
right
we're
now.
talking about America.
What do you think we have?
We're not talking about Ireland.
What did they call the IRA animals is my point, Jesse. I believe that there is a racial undertone to that as well.
I'm sure people have called the IRA animals as well.
Do you think that if they were a different ethnic
group? Are we really arguing about the IRA?
I am arguing about the backhanded use of the demonization of another group.
I will call the Crips and the Bloods animals too.
You do? When was the last time you did that? When was the last time?
I'll do it right now. If they're out there running down innocent Americans, a bunch of animals.
Guys, this is about immigration, about the border, and about Mexico. Let's bring it back.
It's not about immigration.
Yes, it is.
MS-13 is not about immigration.
Yes, it is. Look at the documentation of all the number of criminals coming over and gang members coming into this country, unaccompanied minors. That's how this whole discussion discussion started and the narrative was built. So, yes, that speech was a campaign speech. It was about midterm elections, 5 months going in now to make sure to rally and bring out and motivate the base. People said, oh, is he going to alienate independents? That's not what the purpose and focus
I love
of this
Donald
was.
Trump. He's been my friend for 40 years. When he came down the escalator and gave his announcement speech that he was running, and he compared Mexican immigrants to rapists and murderers, I said to myself, oh my God, but I'm going to give him a pass because he's a rookie. It's his first time, first speech. I'll give him a...
Hey.
Let's get you in here. I wanted to ask about all sorts of things, especially if you think this is persuasive, because obviously it's what gets people animated.
Well, okay, with MS-13, the Democrats have not learned that when they didn't name terrorists radical Islamists, that helped elect a man who did. So what Donald Trump did more than anybody was call them radical Islamist terrorists. And if you persist in calling MS-13 humans and not animals, you're actually the one that's conflating it. It's like they're accusing people calling gang members animals with conflating with immigrants when actually it's the reverse. However, Trump is at a really good position here to do something. He is welcoming the positive while the Democrats are defending the criminal. This is why he should have an Oval Office chat with America about a solution to the path to citizenship, a DACA solution. So while the Dems continue to defend gang members, he's actually saying we want the good people here. So you have the positive. He's stressing the positive while they defend the criminal, I think would be a good strategy.
All right, well, we'll see what happens. Obviously, it's what gets people talking. That's probably why they're talking about it. Kim Kardashian, she's at the White House. Find out why next.
Hey.
Kim Kardashian goes to Washington. The reality TV star is at the White House to discuss prison reform and the case of a 62-year-old great-grandmother who is serving life behind bars. Meanwhile, a Tennessee man is headed back to prison after a federal court ruled that his early release 2 years ago was actually an error. The judge who reduced his sentence is calling on the president to intervene. He spoke to Dana earlier.
This man had done exactly what we hope people will do and use their time incarcerated to become a productive citizen, and he did just that. And I thought that warranted some serious consideration for his release.
There are increasingly loud calls for President Trump to commute the sentence or even pardon him. Do you think that's warranted?
I think absolutely, and that is his only chance now. I think that's exactly what you should do. This man has done what we asked of him, and he ought to be an example to others.
I couldn't agree more. This case, it really moves me, Dana, in terms of, being a former prosecutor and assistant district attorney. I saw so many cases, and I tried to do my very best and always be courageous to stand up when you know the right thing to do, like this judge did, and come on your program and talk about it and say, listen, I'm going to go out on a limb here and tell you that I believe the president should do this because he was moved by the case. He got personally involved, and he didn't stand back and do nothing. He wants something to be done. Justice can be served here if something like the commutation of the sentence or a pardoning is happening.
This case really affected me over the weekend as I read more about it. It's something that's very interesting that you guys are not going to believe this. So as they were working on the appeal, so he gets out based on the judge you just saw there, Kevin Sharp, saying he deserves to be out based on President Obama's reevaluation on mandatory minimums, especially for crack cocaine sentences. He gets out. For the next year and a half, he works at a food pantry, volunteers at a food pantry, gains employment, gets a house, a vehicle, reconnects with his family, goes to church every week, and then he finds out, oh, actually, the new U.S. attorney, they say, oh, he should have been classified as a career criminal, a career offender, so therefore he shouldn't have been eligible for this. And so they sent him back to prison. Now, the public defenders that were defending Matthew Charles, they thought it would be better not to try to do any publicity about the case so that it wouldn't hurt his chances. And now he is back in prison. There is publicity about it now. I absolutely believe that the president, I think that the president will do the right thing and pardon Matthew Charles. or at least commute the sentence.
And you've seen him do that. In fact, we just recently highlighted the case of the boxer, Mr. Johnson, that was able to, get a pardon from President Trump. I think it's a very compelling case and really highlights the example, Geraldo, that, criminal justice reform should happen. Justice is only served when justice is fair and balanced, and you've got to be able to stand up, especially people in a position to do something about it. And if you see something that is happening that's wrong, don't make it, oh, it's not my problem. I'm just going to sit back and do nothing. There's nothing more repugnant to me than when people do that.
And there's no doubt but that race infuses sentencing. The crack cocaine example is probably the most egregious in recent times, but there's I want to just change the direction just a little bit. I just want to say about Kim Kardashian and Jared Kushner. These are two of the most underestimated people in the country. Kim Kardashian, gets the brunt of so many jokes. She has 60 million followers. She's created a multi-trillion-dollar, not exaggerating, but a gigantic commercial enterprise. And she now has seized this issue, prison reform and sentencing reform, and God bless her for it. Jared Kushner, constantly mocked by comedians on the left and deminimized, he and Ivanka. This is a guy, a young man who really has his heart in the right place, his head screwed on right. And the fact that he is, I think that this is the line of communication. Kardashian, Jared Kushner, that's what brought them to the White House, to the president's attention. And to Dana's point, I think he will do the right thing.
Yeah, and he vowed to improve the system that his father had been through. And, it's a kind of a moving moment. Okay, Greg.
Yeah, I guess this is good politics, what he's doing. But I would like to talk about, I'm very wary of the phrase prison reform, because it's incredibly vague. We're talking about specific cases here, and I understand that, and I think these are really important cases, and it's good news, and I hope they are free. But we have to be very careful with prison reform, because people obsess over incarceration rates while crime rates have fallen. Crime rate goes down when criminals are locked up. I know that incarceration sounds mean-spirited, but it's not supposed to be a reward. And it is a fact, cause and effect, that we have seen dramatic declines in crime because of incarceration. Now, we get into this point where we talk about, is this based on race? There are differences in sentencing that may not be due to discrimination. And I'm going to take a benign example. There's something where studies show that blacks get pulled over more for speeding by percentage over Asian Americans. That you would immediately think is racist, but as Thomas Sowell points out, it's a reflection in age difference. The average age for an Asian American is about 20 years higher than black Americans. So it's young people who are speeding more. It's not about race. So when we look at these things, we have to be very, very careful about what we're saying and what we want to change. We need prison reform. It may not be about incarceration rates, though. It may be about how to transition people out of prison so they can have a second chance in life, which I'm 100% for.
Yeah. Well, that's why I talk about criminal justice reform, because I think it's too narrow of a focus if you just say prison reform. And I think specifically what people take issue to, Jesse, is the federal guidelines, which are, quite stringent, don't allow for any type of good behavior and credit, et cetera, which is just quite a disparity if you look at the juxtaposition between the state system and the federal system.
Yeah, there's a difference between sentencing reform and prison reform, and Greg touched on it at the end. It's transitioning felons who are in the penitentiary to be able to go and have a life outside once they're released. They're going to be released eventually, so you want to put them in rehab while they're behind bars so they can then go out and be rewarded for good behavior and have a positive feeling towards work and kind of be rehabbed a little bit, because prisoners that leave the penitentiary and then don't have rehab, 60% of them go back into prison for committing more crimes. So that's what Jared Kushner is trying to address.
All right. Okay.
And the First Step Act, you should mention it. First Step Act, job training, drug counseling, halfway houses, home confinement. Passed the Congress 360 to 59, one of the rare bipartisan deeds of our
I would
dysfunctional
embrace home
Congress.
confinement.
But it still has to pass the Senate.
You're on home confinement.
I am.
This is your work release.
If only he would stay there. And two great examples, though, of highlighting this important issue and the president tackling it. You won't believe what MSNBC's Chris Matthews is saying about Republicans, and we'll show you all of that next. My God.
Great song.
What is What's wrong with you?
MSNBC liberal Chris Matthews routinely lashes out at Republicans, but his latest attack might just take the cake.
Republicans are told, read the Wall Street Journal, play golf, and talk about pro sports. I mean, the men especially are all programmed a certain way. They don't have too many outliers, Republicans. They all behave basically the same, right? You must play golf. You don't play tennis. You must watch sports and talk about the NFL. You must talk. And what else? Oh, read the Wall Street Journal. And believe the op-ed page.
Okay, Greg, what do you think about that characterization?
He's absolutely right. I mean, the thing is, he is correct. It's a stereotype that I don't fit into. I don't play golf. I don't smoke cigars. I don't own khakis. I listen to death metal. I listen to thrash metal. I listen to industrial electronica and punk. I'm pro psychedelics and pro drugs. I'm not a typical Republican, and that has been a challenge. We need to have some heterogeneous types in this world.
We're a big tent. We'll let you in, even though you don't.
Yeah, I'll throw up in the tent, by the way.
I mean, you're at the table, so it's a start.
That's right. Dana, what do you think?
I only get 1 out of 3 of these. I always read the Wall Street Journal. I don't play golf, and you've heard me talk about pro sports. So, but I do think that what Chris Matthews, in some ways, it mirrors what some on the right say about the left.
Yes,
the left. And that there's very few outliers. What's very interesting, I don't know much about the left on the progressive side of things and how diverse that might be, but what's happening with younger conservatives is very interesting.
True.
And they might not call themselves card-carrying Republicans, but they call themselves conservatives, and they're voting Republican, and voting is what's going to make the difference.
That's right. We don't care what sport you play as long as you vote Republican.
I hate golf, although I have a major tournament named after me. I'm the worst golfer in America. I've always played tennis.
Typical liberal.
I am a Republican. I just think that when you start stereotyping, I think that's the problem, is to put everybody in the same basket.
I hate stereotypers.
We never stereotype about anybody on the show, right, KG?
Never happens, not here. This is just so crazy. I'm beginning to think there's something in the air conditioning system over there at MSNBC because it's just so pervasive. They go on these rants, but guess what? I guess it works, for their ratings. But they say these things that are just nonsensical. They're stereotyping of people, and it's just really very limiting. It's identity politics, and I don't know. They're into it. They seem to really...
I got to say,
I'm
guilty of this. I have been editing my book. Do you know how many times I describe professors as having a nose ring and a ponytail and smelling of patchouli?
Churchill?
It's like something.
I hate patchouli.
It's shorthand. We all do this kind of weird shorthand.
Like if you play golf and you read and you like sports, how bad of a stereotype is that?
But the bigger point is that race and culture, to your point in the first segment, will trump the economy when it comes to identity politics and how people vote.
Well,
I think that you will see a much, it's going to be black and white. It's going to be...
Why does it have to be black and white?
It's going to be white and other.
I think the color green brings people together, and a good economy that's robust, good jobs,
Spoken
numbers,
like a true Irish
low
woman.
unemployment. Yes.
Not a member of the IRA.
But she has an IRA. She's very good with her finances.
Yeah, bigger now that Trump's been president.
Kimberly, you're an animal.
A former teacher corrects the president of the United States. We'll tell you what happened up next.
But if you give me just one night, you're gonna see me in a moonlight.
Garbage? Yes. Everybody's a Trump critic. Even a retired high school English teacher whose correction of a form letter sent by the White House has gone viral. Yvonne Mason, her name, she wrote to President Trump in the aftermath of the Parkland school massacre.